Bucknutters, welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, June 21st, 2017. I am Dave Biddle, and I'm very happy to be joined by the people's champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, I did a gallery for the site yesterday, just looking at the top 12 Ohio State running backs of all time. I was going to make a top 10, but just made it top 12, so I didn't want to leave a couple guys out that I thought deserved to be in there. Let's parse that down and go with the top 5 running backs since Archie Griffin's era. So basically Archie and 4 other running backs in whatever order. Assuming you want Archie Griffin in your top 5, and you want Archie Griffin in your top 5. So Bax, give me in order top 5 Ohio State running backs from Archie Griffin's era until now.
Well, I'm going to have a little bit of recency bias being the guy who, of the younger end of the spectrum, but there's no question Archie's number 1. And then the only 2-time Heisman Trophy winner in history. You get number 1, and it's not even really up for debate. Number 2 for me, I'm going to go with an old school one who I actually had to watch video of back like a couple years ago because I didn't realize how good he was. That's Keith Byers, one of those guys that should have won a Heisman Trophy, right? And, you know, if it hadn't been for the Flutie long bomb, Byers had everything, man. That guy was a great player. So I'd probably put him number 2. Number 3, I'm going to put Ezekiel Elliott just because he could do everything. Not only, and another guy, by the way, who in the should have won the Heisman Trophy category too, in my opinion. You know, one bad game against Michigan State goes away, and Zeke might have been a Heisman finalist. Then after Zeke, I'm going to end up going back to the Heisman winner himself, Eddie George, who was a mainstay of many of my fantasy football teams in high school as well. And then number 5, some people may not like this, but it's Maurice Clarett. The 1 year of Clarett was insane. It's a shame the guy never got to get his life straight and go out and play a really, 3-year career at Ohio State because he had everything. He was the hardest runner I've maybe ever seen in the game of football. So that's my top 5. Archie, Byers, Elliott, George, and Clarett.
I like it. People that want to denigrate Maurice Clarett for being on these lists, he was fantastic that 1 year. They won the national championship.
He was close to the offense.
Yeah, he was. He was the best player in that offense. And Chris Gamble played some offense that year. Michael Jenkins was a fantastic receiver, but Clarett was the offense. And there was just such a difference when he got hurt and he wasn't able to play. He missed a total of 3 games that season, 1 for a knee and 2 for the shoulder. But there was one game, I believe the Purdue game, the Holy Buckeye game, that he played barely in the first quarter and had to leave because of that shoulder/stinger. It was like holding on by a thread by the Michigan game. They had him all wrapped up. And I remember Tressel talking about how they came up with this contraption to keep his shoulder/stinger from being too bad in the Michigan game. Clarett was fantastic that year, and he would have, I pointed this out yesterday, Bax, Clarett would have been a Heisman finalist. He would have been in New York that year if he didn't have that injury. That's how good he was, his yards per carry, his touchdowns, everything. Maurice Clarett would have been a Heisman candidate that year if not for the injury, and he was still really good.
Yeah, and think about what would have happened in 2003 with Maurice Clarett on that team, which was essentially the whole team back from the year before, except a year better. That was, every year you talk about, this year should be the year under Tressel, right? Well, it's always the year before, the year after that it ended up being the year where, hey, this really could be the year. I remember thinking in 2002, next year we're going to be really good. No, we won the title that year. And I remember thinking 2005 had to be the year. Well, then the next year in 2006, they went undefeated wire-to-wire number 1 until they lost the championship. So, Clarett could have – there's an alternative universe out there where Maurice Clarett stayed for 3 years at OSU, won at least the Heisman Trophy, and was a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So, that's just the kind of talent that kid had.
My top 5, we agree on Archie at number 1, and the rest of my top 5 is different. I have Ezekiel Elliott number 2. You could really make the argument. I know everybody looks at Heisman trophies and that's the ultimate trump card, but if they gave out the Heisman Trophy at the end of the season, not before the postseason, Ezekiel Elliott would have won the Heisman probably in 2014. I can't imagine. His postseason was unbelievable, getting at least 100 or 220 yards in each game. Those 3 games, he was the star of the national championship team, and just the way he ran and how he was a complete back. He was a great blocker, best blocking tailback I've seen at Ohio State. And Ezekiel Elliott to me is number 2. I have Eddie number 3, and I really struggled. You have Keith Byers. I love that you have Keith Byers so high because I really think Keith Byers and Eddie are basically tied at 3, but I'm not going to do a tie. I have Eddie at 3 and Keith Byers at 4. Keith Byers was Oh, I loved Keith Byers when I was a little kid. He was amazing. Another guy, my first Ohio State player that I loved, I think I was probably like 6 years old at the time or 7, was Tim Spencer. So I had Tim Spencer fifth. He was fantastic. Obviously, Evan Spencer's father, Tim Spencer, was a hell of a running back for the Buckeyes. That's my top 5: Archie, Zeke, Eddie, Keith Byers, and Tim Spencer. Let's move on and talk about a team that you hate, and a lot of people listening to this show hate, the Michigan Wolverines. I'm waiting for my Phil Steele to come. Curious what he's going to have to say about Michigan this year. Bax, what do you say about Michigan this year? What can we expect from the Michigan Wolverines this season?
The one word I have in mind with them is regression. They can't lose 40 seniors and expect to just, plug and play and be ready to go. They opened the season on a neutral site game against Florida this year, which is going to be a fascinating sort of bellwether for how good they are. If you look at their bringing back, they're really not bringing back many key contributors. And I think Harbaugh knows it. That's why he's letting some kids who maybe shouldn't be on the football team anymore because of criminal transgressions stay on the team. But I look at them and, their talent level is certainly improved over where it was a few years ago, right? But they lost a lot of key players. And by a lot, I mean a lot. And they all want to talk about, we got Rashawn Gary, we'll be fine. Okay, you got one good replacement coming in who barely saw the field last year, which makes me a little concerned about how good exactly he was, because a true freshman, like say, Nick Bosa, played a ton last year for a better D-line at Ohio State. So I look at them, and the last couple of years under Harbaugh, they've won 10 games, and I'm not so sure they get there this year. I think they're looking more like 8, maybe 9 wins for them, but I don't think it's going to be a contention sort of year for them. This is definitely sort of a rebuilding year. And they don't like that term, but you know what? They don't recruit like Ohio State either, where it's a reloading year every year instead of a rebuilding year. So I could easily see an 8-4, 9-3 kind of year at best for them.
When you look at the Big Ten as a whole, who might be a surprise team, a team that right now nobody thinks is really going to be good, that at least is, a solid bowl team and might even be better than that? Who's going to be the surprise team in the Big Ten this year?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a surprise team, but this is a team I think nobody's talking about and people forgot was pretty decent last year. That's Minnesota. They made a bowl game last year. They went like 8-4 for the second straight year. And then they fired their coach, who should never have got that job in the first place, and brought in PJ freaking Fleck, who is one of the best coaches in college football. And I know people like to complain and whine and say, PJ Fleck's not that good, Bax. You're overhyping PJ Fleck. PJ Fleck just, went to Western Michigan, which is the definition of a bum program, and turned him into a BCS bowl team. I don't know what else to tell you. I think Minnesota's a team that could quietly contend in the West. And I know they're replacing players, and I know they don't have a gigantic amount of talent yet, but I think Fleck's going to do something with that program, and I think his impact's going to be pretty immediate. And he's inheriting a team that has made 2 straight bowl games where they won 8 games. So I don't think a lot of people are talking about Minnesota, but I think when Phil Steele comes by, he's going to probably give Minnesota way more respect than the general public is.
I haven't talked to you since Chris Holtmann was hired. Let's switch gears to basketball real quick before I let you go. Just your thoughts on Chris Holtmann taking over this program. He's already landed Kyle Young. What's your take on Chris Holtmann so far?
Well, I wrote the bucket 2 weeks ago about this, and that I liked the hire. I'm glad we got to the hire. I hated the process of just deciding to pull the plug and then, let's offer him a lowball offer. Let's offer someone else a lowball offer. How many other people do you have to offer lowball offers before you come back and actually give Holtmann a reasonable contract? But look, compared to where this program would have been throughout this year, which would have essentially been a lame duck year for Thad, with virtually no talent on the team, this is a really good hire in that I like Holtmann's track record. They've won games 3 straight years in Butler in the NCAA tournament. He's coming to Ohio State. He has more resources. He's already brought Kyle Young with him. I think he's going to do a much better job in recruiting than Thad, because I think there's a direct line correlation with Thad Matta's recruiting falling pretty hard downhill and Thad Matta's physical issues sort of being used as much more heavily against Ohio State in recruiting. There's none of that anymore. So Ohio State's going to go back to being one of those sort of destination places for kids. And I think that the quality of coaching is certainly going to be a step up, because previous to this issue with Thad in terms of bringing talent, Thad's big calling card wasn't player development or strategy. It was the fact that he could recruit some exceptional talent to come play for him. I think Holtmann's going to probably be a little bit of an X's and O's upgrade. So I like the hire. I'm not saying OSU's going to be a tournament team this year because that's a lot, but I do think it's not going to be a pointless, wasted year where, my mental image of a mid-February game in the Schottenstein Center was going to be like, 5,000 people at it because the team wasn't going to be good and everybody saw where this was going. So this is a good thing for Ohio State that this change was made. I think they brought in a very good guy, and I think he's going to be pretty successful at OSU. Whether he has the same ceiling that Thad did with, Final Fours in the championship game, it remains to be seen. But I like the hire, and I think it's a coach that we can get behind, and hopefully he can turn around this program pretty quick in the next couple of years.
Great stuff as always out of my guy, Matt Baxendell. He is the People's Champ. You can catch his column every Sunday. It is The Bucket. Thank you very much, Bax, and thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.